Communication. And I'm delighted to see Dr. Priya Raghavan's class here of the PCOM 620 Research Methods and Communication Studies. We've just had a really great session with our special guest who gave you a little bit of his insights into ethnographic methodology. And today now we're moving into an interview situation where we're going to invite everybody here, but also members of the faculty and students and faculty from the other two programs in the School of Communication and Culture, as well as our grad cert students. And so say hello to the live stream people out there, everyone, and let's be on semi-good behavior because we are a little bit more public than usual. It's my pleasure to introduce our special guest, Dr. Binod Agrawal, who's come all the way from India to see us en route to a special conference that happens annually in the United States. And I'm going to read a little bit of his 30-page CV here. This is the truncated version, and I apologize to everybody ahead of time. I've been practicing a few of my pronunciations of a few place names, but I know you're going to laugh hilariously at some of my pronunciations. So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Binod Agrawal, who got his MA in anthropology in 1963.
That's right.
Yes, so secrets revealed. He also studied, he got his PhD in 1970 from the University of Wisconsin. Yes. And he's a well-known international communication research expert, which is why we really wanted him to be here. His career really spans so many aspects of the specialization of this program. He has a reputation of being very innovative in research methods and techniques, as we heard. He's an institution builder, very interested in management and communication, and teaching leadership studies and its relationship to our discipline. In 2009, he was awarded by the Asian Media Information and Communication Center, which is an influential international body for regional research, the Asian Communication Award for his outstanding contributions and his leadership in Asian communication research. He started off his career in communication with 2 gold medals from Lucknow University, awarded for being the best all-round student and for obtaining highest marks in master's thesis in 1963, possibly for telling very good stories as well. He has a distinction in the setting up of Himgiri Z University. He's the founding vice chancellor and was in that role for 2005 to 2012. Also the professor of eminence and director general and director of Talim Research Foundation, Bhopal, Ahmedabad, which he founded in 1995. And during his tenure there, he led an interdisciplinary social science research team and was involved in media and communication research, consulting, and teaching. He is a founder and director of Mudra Institute of Communications, and which was India's first postgraduate professional teaching place, focusing on business communication and advertising, and that was started in 1994. Oh, so much more. Earlier, Professor Agrawal was advisor in social applications in satellite communications at Space Application Center Indian Space Research Organization, that's ISRO if you're looking for acronyms out there, where he worked for over 2 decades and pioneered the use of qualitative methods for communication. And we learned from the recent lecture how path-breaking that was for him to do that. On page 2 of 30 here. Also involved in research during the world-famous satellite instructional television experiment. As we learned, that was, again, a path-breaking experiment that has led to so many insights that would not have been possible to find had strictly quantitative methods been used. He's taught both in India and the USA. He's been a visiting professor and visiting faculty in Indian universities, American universities, lecturing the UK, across the world. We heard about some of his travels, just getting to all of these places where he's still currently involved in a chair position. And he represents India in several international forums. I could say more, but I think what I'd like to do now, because I have a little bit of an idea of the questions that our colleague, Dr. David Black, who's to my left here, has prepared for Dr. Agrawal, we'll probably cover most of the rest of the the achievements and jobs that Dr. Agrawal has. And so now I would like to turn it over to these two gentlemen to have a wide-ranging discussion about several aspects of Dr. Agrawal's career. Thanks very much, David, and I really appreciate you coming to peer into the life and career of this esteemed guest.
Thanks, Virginia. Oh, here we are. It's working? Okay. Yes. He has the lavalier. Yeah, that's good. It's been such a pleasure to explore your CV. I teach in international communication, among other things, and was involved in building your 560 course in the ISC on campus. And I've taught it for years as well. And one of the challenges with intercultural and global communication is that a lot of the work is done, not surprisingly, all around the world. So to piece together the story of intercultural or international global communication, international or intercultural communications development, you have to go far afield. You have to bring people like Dr. Agrawal here to really sort of see what is done in the name of intercultural and international communication. So it's such a pleasure to do that. And in reading his CV, I noted some affinities between my own career, far less illustrious, and what you've done. So I'll speak to a few of those as we go. In your both in terms of your early life growing up in India, and in terms of the 3 degrees in anthropology that you did in both India and the United States, and one of my degrees was also in anthropology, a point of affinity. It's not, there's no necessary or logical relationship between growing up in India, or certainly studying anthropology, and later specializing in communication, media, and development. In fact, anthropology and media was a late theme to develop in that discipline, and yet there you were in the 60s and 70s already researching these issues. So how did you become who you are as a function of growing up as you did and pursuing 3 degrees in anthropology?
I must tell you that I'm a marginal person to the extent that I really didn't know where I was going.
Okay.
While I was doing my PhD at the University of Wisconsin, I met a gentleman named late Professor K. Ipon, who was pursuing his PhD, though he was 20 years older than me, pursuing his PhD at University of Wisconsin. So he created some interest in communication. But more than that, I would say one thing that intrigued me most to get into some area was that anthropology per se was not intriguing me or putting me something to do new. And so I always thought, can I apply anthropology in some discipline? So my master's degree thesis was on doctor-patient relationships in a modern hospital. So people thought I was a little crazy not going to tribal community and studying them, rather doing this. But that has put me to a new path, what I call it today applied anthropology. And I pursued that line. Secondly, when I returned back to India, I'm talking today something 40 years old, there was no position available in the country for people like me. And I was very determined to return home. I had a full-time assistant professorship job at Iowa State University, and the dean called me and said, if you stay for this semester, we'll promote you to associate professor, we'll make you tenured. And I had to debate myself, but thanks to my wife, she said, we are going home. Job, no job. So I said, okay, we'll go home. And while we were debating this, we got an offer from Indian Agriculture Research Institute in New Delhi, which is a premier institution. So I said, okay, let's take the challenge and go. My designation immediately changed to rural sociologist. I was no more anthropologist. So I said, that's not good, I will not be an anthropologist. When I arrived in New Delhi, I was told by my predecessor that this post has always been occupied by an anthropologist. Whether rural sociology or anthropology is the same, you are going to do rural studies. So in that time, I got involved in communication in a deeper way, because when I arrived in IRI, there were 11 people, PhD students, waiting for me to arrive, on which I was a minor professor of rural sociologist. So for the next 2 years, I didn't do anything much working with these people, getting their PhD completed, and that gave me a lot of insight to get a degree or get a hang over communication, because these people were doing only one thing. Everett Rogers adoption and diffusion model, they have to examine this question from a variety of angles. And I said, it can't be just adoption and diffusion model, there must be something more. And during that period, I got an offer from Indian Space Research Organization to come and evaluate the research project site. When I reached to Ahmedabad, it was no problem, I reached there. Then I found I was in a most challenging position. Never before I have even understood the term communication. And here I am, challenged by everybody, study communication. And that was the really issue that brought me to communication. But luckily, I went back to anthropology and I read Edward Shapiro, the first definition that was given by him on the communication in Encyclopedia of Social Science in 1931 or so, if I remember correctly. And that allowed me to begin to understand the whole school of New York, French Boas, Margaret Mead and all that once again, that I have to study communication as a process, what people do. And that is also took me to language part of it. India being a multilingual country, variety of languages. So my first challenge was that I have to conduct evaluation in 7 languages of India. And they were as distinct and different like French and Russian, or Russian and English. But I said, okay, I will do it. So the first thing that we did at that time is to look for anthropologists trained in anthropology from those linguistic regions. I was lucky in all these 7 states, there was a department of anthropology from where I got assistance. That's how I got into anthropology to communication.
But I think certainly, I mean, your experience as a pioneer in communication is typical of many, because there weren't many institutional pathways to study communication in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s. So those people who end up in communication often found themselves there accidentally, you know, a research project, the offer of a job, the prospect of developing a new department at a university where there had been no communication. As compared to today, where communication is well established, it's worldwide, everything is, you know, signposted and available. That wasn't true back then.
Yeah.
And so your story is very common, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I mean, I wanted to share with you, and that pushed me into communication. I've never been able to be out of it.
Let's speak about the discipline of communication more generally. We've recently had a married couple, both from China, who reminded us as colleagues in our department, the School of Communication and Culture, how much of the story of our discipline, which is communication in general, has been developed really you know, in various parts of the world. It's almost like it's a secret history of communication as both an institution and as a discipline. Again, secret in the sense that it's being developed often out of earshot or outside the attention of Anglo-American scholarship. You yourself have been involved in building what was, when you arrived as a young scholar in India, a new discipline in communication. And I wonder if you could reflect on, after all these years, what distinguishes the development of the discipline of communication in India? What themes, what problems, what issues seem to be particularly galvanizing or interesting?
If I reflect, I would only say something that may not be palatable to many of my colleagues. In India, communication meant print medium journalism. It was taught across the Indian universities even today. And so research was not their first love in the departments. So Newspaper analysis was very popular. Content analysis was very popular. Every second or third thesis that I read was on the newspaper, page 3, column 10, analysis. Front page analysis of New York Times, Times of India, New York Times less, but Times of India, Indian Express, Indian papers more. So I started wondering where to go from here, because that was the time when communication as a discipline was emerging in India. So the first department of communication was opened in Bangalore University by Professor K.E. Pan. He said, no journalism, communication. And he also established at that time research tradition, which is basically a small portion of what I was doing. And so the communication as a discipline, even today, are very limited in India. But journalism is much more. But in the last 3 years, School of Communication at Manipal University, where I go as a mentor, I found that they are getting more and more in research.
Thank you. India is the most diverse country in the world. There are over 2,000 ethnic groups in India alone. And that's not counting those that have arrived during the modern era from other parts of the world. It's also a country where there remain, although things are improving, great extremes of poverty and wealth, a caste system, kind of a dominant religious group, the Hindu, Muslims, and any number of other religious groups. It is a country that is distinguished by its diversity in a way that almost no other country in the world is. So to study intercultural communication in a place where that is everyday life, I mean, yes. it should be in the national anthem, must be a remarkable thing. And I wonder if you could share a little bit of in that part of your career that has involved intercultural communication, what have you learned by being a researcher in India about this topic?
The first and foremost thing I will say that it is a multilingual, multi-religious, multi-hierarchical society or civilization, which is as old as any civilizations in the world. Having said so, I would say only one thing, and a very small story of last night. I got a call from Kerala, southern states, and the lady started talking to me in Malayalam. I don't understand Malayalam, but I had to say yes, yes, yes. But fortunately, her tone and style of presentation gave me the feeling that she was very happy that I was there with her daughter-in-law and son. So this is a day-to-day experience of every Indian, especially those who live in urban areas. You don't know what to do. And this is not limited to language, food habits, speech, non-verbal communication, all put together is that intercultural communication. In order to survive in such a complex situation, you become willy-nilly multilingual. So I was in the class here and somebody asked me how many languages I speak. I don't know any language, but I will manage in each of the language because I worked in 780 states of India. So intercultural communication you have to understand from that perspective. Another characteristic feature of intercultural communication is non-verbal communication, which is very, very strong in a country like India, where people may not be able to talk to each other, but they communicate their ideas through symbols and signs and gestures, which is a more or less, I would say, pan-Indian behavior. The third thing in the intercultural communication is misunderstanding that exists at all levels at all times. So you accept that this will happen, some confusion, you be ready for that and adapt yourself in a given situation. These three characteristics are very particular, special about Indian multiculturalism.
There's a lot there that everyone in the world could learn from in terms of just dealing with the intercultural condition in some sense, and kind of interculturalism as a kind of global theme and problem. Gender remains a topic of acute sensitivity and great importance in India, whether it's in the limited sense of looking at women in development, or just looking at the place of women with respect to cultural and political power in Indian society. In your work with the Talim Research Center and more broadly with your kind of ongoing career, what have you learned about how we could put women, communication, and media together in a way that's instructive and constructive?
I will go back in my past. The first book that came out on this topic was Women, Communication, Women and Development, way back in mid 80s. Myself and a woman anthropologist named Kumkum Roy, we had put that work, and I will start from there to answer your question. I asked her, how do we get some information about women? And she said, you can't get anything until I'm there. And I said, well, how come? She said, you have to go in the evening with a pot of water in what they call jungle. Jungle means secluded piece of land in the village, where they will sit in circle, 20, 30 women, and they will take more than an hour to do what they could do in 5 minutes, toilet. So I said, why 1 hour? He said, we all come together, we do our job very quickly, but we sit there and share all the information of the village in that circle. And the elderly women will advise some of the younger women what to do tomorrow or tonight with your husband, with your father-in-law, all that. And that was the first clue that I got it to understand how women control men. During that debate. And it goes on and on and on and on every evening. It has some very serious problems with these women, health problem, kidney problem. But in spite of that difficulty, they will go every evening, get together, talk to each other. And I also learned for the first time that these groups are formed, communication groups, depending upon their common interest, common other things. So there will be a group of mother-in-laws with daughters. There is another group, daughter-in-laws only, so they can share their views against their husbands. And the only thing I would say very crudely, that they discuss anything under the sun during those toilet sitting. The report Kumkum gave me, I could never attend that. See that they talk about their sexual behavior, they talk seduction, they talk how they handle their men, how they ignore them, if they wanted something to be given to them and if they were not giving. So first time I got this realization that there is a very critical role women play in development in India. And that role emerges out of their own experiences. Second thing that came out very clearly, that these women do not act as a dominant actors. They are very passive looking, quieter persons, but they do exactly what they want to do. And no man can handle them on that. So these are the two things that I learned, and later on when I started doing more and more research, I find that in India at least, no matter what the men talk, I'm talking against myself, no matter what the men talk, women do control them in a very specific way. One most important thing, denial of sex, denial of food, these two things are very basically used by them as a major weapon against them if they don't listen to them.
Right, but that's largely within the institution of marriage. But
Yeah.
in terms of Indian culture in general, what have you learned about kind of how women manifest there?
In large part of northern India, as you said, it's a diverse country. Large part of northern India, they remain very passive, invisible. But the visibility starts late in the evening. The visibility starts when the daughters started demanding their father to do certain things. So there were certain specific roles in which they do demand and get it often, not all the time. And that's the characteristics. You go to southern part of India, they will talk to each other much more than any North Indian women can talk. There's a place called Punjab in the northern part of India. Women seem to be very quiet, but they are not quiet. They assert their dominance in more than one way, both as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, and daughter-in-law. So one thing that I would say, forgive me what I'm going to say, please do not generalize about Indian women. Generalize about a specific area of women, which will differ from one to another one. The place I live in for several years now, Gujarat, men will quietly go inside the bedroom to a room and they will talk. Men won't talk. They will deal everything in day-to-day life. Come to my own home where I grew up, my mother won't talk to anybody. My father will talk. No, my grandfather will talk. So there is quite a bit of cultural variation. But the participation of women, I will make a generalization, is very high in agricultural activities, which is a backbone of development. Yeah. As a matter of fact, one of my studies that I conducted in late 60s, early 70s by a woman agricultural scientist in IRI thesis was that she was able to first time identify that 65% of agriculture activities were done by women, not by men. And nobody recognized their labor. 65% of the total agriculture productivity was because of them. From sowing to winnowing, cleaning, every activity they were participating.
Okay, last question. We'll then open the floor to some discussion. It's a remarkable fact among the many that attend India. Within about 20 years, India will be the most populous country on the planet, surpassing China in terms of its growth rate. And right now, more than half the Indian population is under the age of 25, demographically very different than Canada, which is a much older country demographically. You're in this remarkable position of having helped build and now vice chancellor of a private university in the north of India, at a time when you have a growing middle class in India, you have an educationally ambitious population, you have a large young demographic cohort. What is higher education doing for India, and what do you hope to do with the university you're involved with, Himgiri Z?
I would reverse your question a little bit, diversion. First of all, 25 years ago, India has 150 odd numbers of universities. In 2018, we have just about 1,000 universities. That is the extent of expansion of higher education in India. Where I started, it is one of the 800 plus universities. So higher education has been in demand and also being marketed, I am using the term, marketed in the country. So to that extent, availability of higher education is not a question. If the only thing which created problem in India is that so far when it was the state-owned education, it was available for $2 to $3 a year. I paid less than $2 annual fee to go to MA degree. Today, that could be very high.
It sounds very attractive to the contemporary student paying the
Right.
tuition that you are.
Right.
Yes. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can put yourself through school this year.
Right. I mean, I didn't even know that I have to pay a fee. So from that, now it is several 100,000 Indian rupees, or as much as $30,000-$40,000 to pay. So whether you come to Canada or you go to a private elite university in India, you pay the same fee. So that's one change that has occurred. That means I call it marketization of higher education in India. Where would it lead to is already seen. Every young man and woman who has a degree and capability is looking towards West to get a job, to migrate to Canada, United States, England, and wherever there is a little pressure, they move to another country. I am told very recently when I was talking to a counselor that Canada is becoming a preferred place as opposed to United States.
Yeah, why is that? That's very strange.
No,
No, it's not. That was
I would answer your question. Trump is responsible. Visibly. Whether it is really true or not, but that's happening. Trump effect, if you want to call it. So that's one. The second thing which is happening is that aspiration of younger people has diversified. When I was growing up, either I become an engineer or a doctor. That was the highest achievement I will have in my life. So when I decided to go in anthropology, everybody laughed at me. What career is this? My mother was the only one who supported me. She said, you get your degree. What you will do, I will see later. Because you belong to a business family, your business is always there, you can come and join, but you have to have a degree. Today, that is not the case. People are going in n number of diverse fields unknown to us. Right now, I go to advise to a school of design. And it is no joke, men, women, millennials all get together in thousands in number for some 50 seats, 60 seats, 100 seats to admission. So physicotherapy, never heard before. I went to a university where they have a whole department, whole faculty doing nothing but health management training. So these new areas of education is opening up, which was not known to us when we were growing up. And that is absorbing a large number of young men and women who are hoping they will do something new, they will earn money, and so forth and so on.
So sort of occupational diversity and,
Yeah.
and diversity of perspective as well, you know, and I think it only speaks well for the future of communication.
Right.
Because it now becomes one of the many, you know, enticing offerings in this more complex.
There were less than 20 departments. Today we have more than 300, 250 odd departments where communication is taught. And it is not only taught communication, but application of communication in various disciplines.
I think we're sort of rounding out our time for questions from me. I now invite anybody in the room to ask questions of Dr. Agrawal.
Please be my guest.
Maybe following on what you did with the lecture or even with our dialogue here. So.
Please.
Ask a question.
Is
Is intercultural communication more easy now for the professional communicator or more difficult than it was when you began to be involved in it?
I would say it is becoming more difficult, not easier. Because there was a very little sensitivity. Even today in Indian universities, you will not find a department which is designated are focused on intercultural communication. But because of the movement of students from one area to another area, one place to another place, and occupational movement of individuals, intercultural communication is becoming more difficult. Though people adapt, I go to university called Manipal University. It's the first, India's first private university, well endowed, lots of money and so forth. They get students from all over the country. And it's very difficult for them to even talk to each other. But they manage because they are a part of a multicultural India and they survive. But the point that you are making of a very importance to me, is very important, is that is intercultural communication easier today or is it more difficult? I would say it's more difficult. Though at some level it is eased out, but.
Spoken like a true Indian.
Pardon?
Spoken like a true Indian.
Yeah.
Still not a yes, still not a no.
No. True.
Question? Yes.
So I'm not going to ask a question, I'll just make a statement, and I want you to comment on this statement. While I'm, as an intercultural communication student, I'm thinking of intercultural communication as something that should be studied in all majors because of what's going on in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like people travel more,
Mm.
immigration is getting like really one of the themes all over the world. So I would look at intercultural communication as not as a separate field of study, but I would recommend that it should be in business administration studies, economics, like in every aspect of study, rather than being recognized as a separate field of study. What do you think?
I agree with you. I will give you two illustrations, example rather. Even today in India, large number of people who are in business and trade and commerce, they use English as a means of communication, which has allowed them to interact and discuss and do this. Second thing, that this is something I have observed, I am making a personal observation on this. People, when they are going away from home, they deal in intercultural communication. They return home like a rubber, you stretch it, they become back to now. So in terms of their behavior, in terms of their food habits, in terms of their relationships, they change. And this characteristics in a multicultural India is very, very high. So you go to a city like Bombay, people are talking in 20, 30 languages, talking to each other, managing and evolving a hybrid language in which they talk. Come home, back to normal. So I will be at a very personal level say, come to America, eat grilled sandwiches, eat milkshake, go home, demand your food from your wife or your mother or your sister and eat that one only, nothing else. So this morning I was served most delightful Kerala food and I ate well. But when I'll go home, I may not get that one. I will only get what my wife cooks. So this ability to adapt in the multicultural complex is very high. And that is one of the reasons for survival of civilization for such a long time.
Just out of curiosity.
Wait.
Thank you.
Oh.
Just out of curiosity. So what I believe one is how the way you communicate with people who you're communicating with, the amount of time you're spending with that people or anybody from a different culture, it has an effect on you. It influences your personality, thought pattern or all. So you have been working all your life in so many different areas. So just wanted to know if there's any particular culture or any area that influenced your personality or your lifestyle or your thought pattern.
It is, it does. But the point is that what is your ability to elasticity in your behavior to adapt? Because I feel that that elasticity is very, very high in large part of India. And that helps for survival. You go to Kerala, very quickly what you are going to get? Local meal. Language, you don't even know what is being talked, but you survive. Come home, be in your cultural milieu. So this adaptation, especially for multilingual literate Indians, are very high. Because a very large part of Indian population, or for that matter in South Asia, they don't move out of the village. They remain in the village. The proverb is very simple one, from cradle to cremation ground, you live in the same place. For them it doesn't make much difference. But for others, those who are mobile and go place to place, that affects. And adaptation comes in their second nature of behavior.
Thank you.
We have an online question. Okay, so we have a question from our live stream audience. This is from one of our MAIIC students in the blended programs. So Judith would like to know, how has technological advancements in areas like social media impacted intercultural communication over the years?
Thank you. Very excellent question, because it has made me to debate for weeks and I'm not able to reach to any conclusion. But only one thing I can tell you based on the little work that we are doing at the moment is social media has become a new toy in our day-to-day life, especially for educated urban Indians. How much it's going to affect our lives is something I'm not able to answer. I watched an election in Gujarat and Karnataka recently on the social media. I find that people listen, hear, watch, but they do what they want to do. So to that extent, social media has not affected. The two studies that I conducted, I had asked the same question to voters of Delhi. Less than 5% voters said, yes, we do hear about social media. I watch social media. When the question was asked, do you change your mind whom to vote? No. Less than 0.2% were that. I don't remember the number, but it was a very small number. They said, we don't change our mind. So impact of social media, new technology is yet to be fathomed. It is very difficult to say. Digital media as a whole, I used to think that it will affect man-woman relationship. Not able to find out yet. It would affect father-son relationship. No. So I think that they are going in a parallel line. The more studies that I have done and published on digital media and religion, I was most amazed to find out that at least among the Hindus, digital media has done very little to change their behavior. They continue to, one of the very interesting study I had done to look at the cartoon for children, religious cartoon for children, and no effect on children on that. They will watch and laugh and that's it. So I think it will take some time before we will be able to research and evaluate and come to some conclusion as to how new media is going to influence, at least in India. large part of India. Yes, ma'am.
I'm already very loud, so. Thank you, ma'am. So tangential from Judith, I guess. I know that it's taking time in India, and it will, like, huge, because that comes later. My thought process is going bad. When I passed out of school, we already had, because I took some time to do this outreach program with nursery kids in my school, and then I found, because I was very, very surprised to find out that they already have TV screens in place of blackboards. They have screens in nursery. And they have had the chance to play with iPads, touch screens, and of course their adaptability to interact with people on screens is much, much more higher than even I can say about me today. So I feel that we're growing. It's coming, but we're growing, especially in private sector, the private schools.
I fully agree with you. The amount of I would give only one illustration. Today in India, there are more smartphones than the human beings.
Definitely.
Above 6 years of age. Unbelievable. I conducted the first study to find out that illiterate women were using smartphones more extensively than the literate women. Reason being that they had need to communicate with their faraway husbands. Living in Bombay and Calcutta and urban area, earning living, she has to talk every day to find out what's happening to him. All this I accepted. I am not questioning that. The question, more moot question is, important question, is it going to change the human relationships? Is it going to change fundamentally the way human beings are acting and interacting? That is where I have not able to find out yet.
Because if it's a research perspective, and then you'll have to do a lot of
Right.
research to come to even a specific generalization,
Right.
because I can just give you my perspective on this. And that is that I've been here 10 months now. And then when, let's just say 15 years ago, when my elder brother went to US to study, he had to hear this almost every 2 months, that when are you coming home? When will we get to see you? You never have time to talk to us. These questions, of course, had some trauma inside his head, and then he could never visit home as much as he wanted to, but then he tried to talk to them as much as he could. But for me, this has changed because I talk to my parents every day, and it's very easy.
When I came to United States of America many years ago, I had, in 5 years of my stay, I was able to talk twice. And that too after waiting for 12 hours in the home. You book the phone call and they will say, tomorrow morning, Indian time, 8 o'clock will call you. And out of 2 times, only 1 time I got through. First time I didn't get through. When Mrs. Gandhi won the election in 71, I had called, no luck. So the things have changed. Tremendously, technology has influenced our life. But what is going to do to us means the humanity as a whole, we have yet to see. Has the divorce rate increased as a result of smartphones? Has it reduced it? Has the living partnership has increased? These are the statistical information that will, qualitative understanding will give us some understanding as to what direction humanity is taking. So I would refrain from making any comment on it, though the little studies that we have done in the area of religion, I have not found yet any influence. This is another story that you go to Amritsar, 24 hours, Gurudwara, Amritvani is being telecast, people are listening it, but has it changed fundamentally the behavior? I do not know.
Yes, please.
Thanks so much. We have one more question from Judith from the online program.
Okay. Using India as a case study, how has intercultural communication helped create change in our home countries as practitioners in the diaspora?
Home country means what? In Canada or in India?
Wherever you are originally from. So wherever
It is changing
moving
very
away from their
It
countries.
is changing very rapidly in terms of connectivity and spontaneity of communication. The amount of data flow and information flow that is taking place, say for example from Canada to India, is unbelievable. We are in touch 24 hours a day, anytime when we feel like. And technology and marketing strategies have helped us to do that. It has reduced uncertainty. It has reduced conjectures, because you are able to hear every minute. I have come to here to visit you, and already I have spoken to my wife in India to tell her I'm fine. Few words, but information has gone. I spoke to my daughter in London. She says, fine. Call me again. So the point is, this is happening. It's a real life situation. First time in 1987, when I came to Canada with the University of Regina project, only between 2 to 5 in the evening, Regina time, we were able to speak to India because of the tariff and all that other rules. And it was time for Indian men and women to be up. Today, it makes no. You send email, you send fax, information, and you get replies. So the changes have occurred remarkably high. What is going to do to human future, I cannot say. My guess is that it is not going to change. Guess. Thank you.
I think we're ready to close off the afternoon. People need to get to their next appointments. I do want to thank quite a few people, and I'll start with you, Dr. Agrawal, for being so generous.
Thank you.
Just coming and giving yourself, your memories, your thoughts, and ambivalent, but I'm going to say hopeful message about the future.
Yes.
It's not a done deal, people. And as Dr. Agrawal kept repeating over and over again, communication is what we do and what we choose to do. And if we're coming from an intercultural lens, which you have the privilege of like really sinking your teeth into, it's always with that intention, right, of keeping yourself open to the humanity of the other, and being willing to adapt and learn, at least for the time being. You can always be that elastic band and snap back to your favorite comfort food, but you have grown and changed as a person in that interaction. And so we're just so very grateful that you would come. And I do send greetings from your old colleague, Dr. Michael Reel, our professor emeritus, who couldn't be here
Where
today.
Is he now?
He's in Illinois.
I suppose. Okay.
Yeah, he couldn't make it, and he just said to say hello, and he really wishes he could be
Pass
here.
on my greetings and
I will.
condolences for his
I will,
brothers.
but David, my colleague, Dr. David Black, I would really like to thank you so much. You always open.
We shared some past of University of
Right,
Chicago.
anthropology brothers, and David, as usual, you always make people feel so relaxed and able to really bring out the fullness of their experience. So I thank you so much for stepping up and helping this program that you have helped to build. I would also like to thank Priya, the instructor for the PCOM 620 course, Dr. Raghavan, for just being an amazing educator, for loving our students, caring about their development intellectually, emotionally, interpersonally, and to all of you who I've not been able to sit with before, really thank you for being so welcoming and just letting me embed in your course. And I hope to come and do this more often. It's been very busy the last couple of months, but things are evening out, and I'll be able to spend more time and learn more about this area of communication and practice and theory. Thank you to the faculty members who showed up. Thank you so much to the staff who made this possible. You have no idea the amount of coordination. Like, we may have a lot of technology, but it still takes a lot of people juggling a lot of balls in the air to make something like this happen. And I couldn't have done it. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. And so I just wanted to thank the staff very much. Can we give them and Dr. Agrawal and Priya a hand, please?
Thank you. Rush over there. Thank you.
Virginia here for her role in making this all happen. Because without Virginia's support and interest in bringing Dr. Agrawal here, I don't see this as
Okay. Well, when I see an opportunity, I like to leap on it, and that was a very beautiful gift. So, cheers to all of us and to the students and faculty who have been participating online. I love that too. Those voices from the ether. Very, very good questions. Oh, thank you very much. And we have a small token of our
My God,
appreciation.
thank you. Oh, thank you.
You'll need to pay for more luggage now.
Yeah.
And we bid you well on the next leg of your journey. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you again.
Brilliant.